Good morning, everybody. Jason Meyer here with Morning Jumpstart feedback for students. Hope everybody's well, feeling good today, ready to get into some art. Well, we know Tom is. 3, 2, 1, blast off. So I can almost guarantee that my camera is going to go out this morning. It's been lasting about 3 to 5 minutes and then going out. The good news is we still have our iPad up and working, so we'll be able to handle this no matter what comes our way. Well, as long as it doesn't kick us off the internet, we'll handle it. So good morning, Susan. Susan was talking about Masterworks, our evening program. And her husband's Norwegian, and last night we looked at Odd Neerdrum. He does have some very dark paintings. Some people find them some psychologically disturbing, but he handles paint like nobody else. Like there's a few people that can really handle paint, and Odd is one of them. So yeah, Susan says they disturb me and amaze me with their beauty at the same time. And let me know how that went last night. I tried to go further than I have ever been as far as our color and looking at the color, the non-color and the color, and I hope that came through. So if it did, let me know. If it didn't, let me know, and we'll just try harder next time. So for this morning, we've got one landscape we're going to start with, and then we'll look at 3 still lifes. So we're going to go with Peggy up first, then we'll look at Barbara, and Katie will be third, and then Janny will finish the show off with you. And Barbara made it. Good morning, Barbara. Good morning. So without further ado, why don't we, it's not too early for a square dance, is it? Swing your partner around and round. Let's see, let's get it into something worth seeing. There we go. Miss Peggy's waiting in the wings, and there she is. So great. Now, these don't always come across in good color. You know, the reproductions are sometimes a little bit off. But Peggy had said she'd made some breakthroughs with some transparency. I think you've got some great things going, Peggy. I think with a couple of things, it would make a big difference. Let's see what we can get into. It was really good. All right, so Susan was able to catch on to the Odd Neerdrum stuff, and I'm glad. But Susan is one of our more advanced students, so any of you, for lack of better words, more of a newbie, I'd also like to know if it made sense to you. I'm really glad it made sense to the advanced people. It really is an advanced lesson, but my hope is some of these advanced lessons we can bring it closer to the beginning of our journey. All right, so Peggy. I'm loving some of the shapes you're having here with the clouds going around. You've got some really good things happening. I also like that there's not a lot of different color. I see that we have orange, and orange wins. So some good things. So let's talk about how we might shove some things around a little bit. So on one of my passes in my painting, I had the problem with getting this a little too dark. I think if we gray that down a little bit, just to show that it's way back there in the distance. The other thing we might show is eating away at the land right there, that light eating away at the land, and I think that's going to help tremendously. And then probably the last thing we'll talk about is, so you've done a good job here of finding that gray-green, but I think if we drop the value of that gray-green to a bit darker and let the orange be the lightest in there, I think that's going to make a really big deal. And also, we would like the sky to be lighter and then the water to be a little deeper, richer. Okay, so that's theoretically the things I'm looking at, but we're not here for theory. We're here to see it happen. So let's see what we can find out here. So why don't we start with pushing back that back hill. And you have some stuff back here. Let me see if I can find something that you already have. So I'm wondering if we could go, is that too light? That might be too light. And you never really know till you get it down. Let's see how that works there. So can you see that? It's a little pixelated, but all I'm doing is I'm taking that dark hill in the background and I'm making that value just not quite so dark right now. Right? I'm not worrying about anything else, and we may have to move off of it. But for right now, I just want to replace that dark. Get that dark out of that space in the canvas, out of that space in the picture plane. We want to say this space is so far back there. It's so far back there that it's lost its ability to be that dark. Right? Can you imagine if somebody's like a quarter of a mile away from you? Well, they've lost the ability to scream in your ear. Right? Even if they screamed as loud as they could, it's not going to be like they're standing right next to you screaming in your ear. They've lost that ability. So the same is true with distance. Now I think that helps a little bit, but I think we could even go more. Huh? What do you think? Should we go a little weaker even? Maybe? I wonder what would happen if we just threw it slightly on the warm side. Okay, so what I've done is I slightly warm this up. And why would I warm it up? You know, usually when we're going back, we want to go towards coolness. Well, that sun's coming over the horizon, right? And so we've got to have this orange light influencing everything. And so what this does is this helps harmonize to the color of the light. Right? This isn't like a midday scene where the skies. Can you guys feel that difference? And I'm intentionally kind of going slow here, because we mentioned yesterday that color's not something you really see as an artist, but you feel it, right? You can make sense with it, you know how to manipulate it, but if this is right or wrong for this painting is more of a feeling you develop. Yeah, and so to me, that reads, you see how that just seems distance? Seems like distance? All right, Miss Cindy Meyer holding the whole ship together with duct tape and super glue. You're the best, baby. The abstract feeling to the paint. Yeah, she's got a nice balance. A nice balance. I think it was you, Wendy, who'd sent some photo references asking about Fred Cummings and doing some things. Most of his things is about that aesthetic balance, and it's kind of tricky. I'm still contemplating if what kind of lesson I could give on that. So I haven't given up on that. It's tumbling around an old brain there, seeing what I could do with it. Good morning, Katie. So if you missed it, Katie, you're going to be third up, and we're on our first one today. All right, so our first step is we kind of darken that horizon a little bit. And then while we're back there, why don't we go ahead and eat away. Let's eat away a little bit at, should I do that? I should be on the same thing so I could get my soft edges. It's nice to show you guys, but to layer, but if I do the layers, it's harder to soften those edges there. All right, and while I'm here too, I'm going to go into that sun. I'm going to make it basically a really light gray orange. Okay, so instead of white, you see I want to get some warmth in there immediately. And it's so close to the horizon. It's so close to that horizon. that it might be a little bit more like that. Okay, and then the key here is we want to get a little bit darker as we walk off of that. So then the sky around that has got to be darker so this can glow, and a bit grayer. Right, but I want it kind of a warm gray. Now, is that too dark? At first it seems like it, but let's put some in here and back off and see what we have. I do think this is going to prove to be just a tad, just a tad. And it's hard to tell with everything around it. It's not too bad, and I think maybe outward, like maybe out here, this might work good. So I'm going to go ahead and put some of this down, and then we're going to go back inside it. And notice how the distance between this hill that we've adjusted and the gray in the sky is closer together. What does that do? Well, it softens that edge. Without touching the edge, it has the effect of softening it. Right? Because those are a little closer together. Now, let's go back here. And we want to go just a little darker and a bit grayer. And let's see where that gets us. Okay, so that's more of a glow there. I think I'd like a little more. There we go. But you see that glow is darker. Do you see what I'm putting down is darker than that orange that was there before? And if we're really going to have the glow, it's going to be lighter and more colorful than that gray around it. And we just want to kind of seep into that gray. Seep into that gray. And what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Are we going to that non-color? You see how this is a little more greenish than orangish? So it steps a little bit. It still feels warm. So how's that sense of glow coming? Do you feel that sense of glow? Okay, so it's about that right measure. And again, since it's so close to the horizon, I don't want to say it's white, because then what that does is it takes all the atmosphere out. Right? But saying it's a bit darker, right? And then giving those steps off of it, we'll let it glow. Then if we come back over here, what I'd like to do in the water, at least the first time around, is think about no white. Right, so you see how this is going to be quite a bit darker and richer. Okay, then what that's going to do is it's going to let the sky say all of the lights coming from here. All the lights coming from here. So we're going to darken down that lake. And what did we talk about? We talked about maybe underneath. Maybe underneath. Having that little darker, grayer, blue-green. We want to keep it a little bit warm, I think. That seems a little dark to me. Well, that seems... Yeah, so here we go. So what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Well, this right at the core, the water is going to reflect that hill. And that's going to help soften that edge. So you see we're going to get kind of that reflection of those gray hills there. And that'll give us a nice soft edge. which is going to release us to go to the sun. And notice this is darker. Right? It's a little darker, a little richer than the hills. We may need to gray that up a little bit. I don't know. Why don't we just cover all of this right now, and then we'll come back. But is this starting to feel a little bit more like morning? Right? A little bit more like morning, those morning values, all real close. You know, something like that. Then get a little bit of that orange coming through there. And up front, it'll be a little darker, richer. And then as we move back into space, what happens? It goes a little lighter and grayer. Smaller. Some of those reflections. Lighter grayer. Then, let's see, there's that frozen camera. That's probably, we can just go ahead and take that guy off. He looks like he fell asleep. What do we need? So now we need some of that sparkle. What's life without a little sparkle? Cindy's my sparkle. Okay, so something in the area. Then what we need to do from here is we've got to go into that cool green sky, but we've got to merge over there. So we're going to go lighter into the sky. I'm going to step off, it's warm. So you see my first gray, it's going to be pretty small. It isn't green, right? It still has a bit of that warm to it. As we go up, slightly lighter, and we might start making our way over to that lighter green. All right. So we've got to make sure we've got our soft edges. This is just sky. We want that flowing into one another. So you see I'm using the colors to help harmonize them. And then if I need a climax, a little bit of that pure green here and there. I can make it bigger if I need to. Hey, I didn't quite get that color in the water right, but I hope that helps you out. And then for the clouds, what we want to do with these clouds that we see is they've got to have form. And since the sun is underneath, then what that means is the bottom sides of these clouds would be quote unquote white, or our lightest light. And we could decide how, sometimes they're big, sometimes it's small. then what do we need to do? Well, we need to turn that. So where's it going to turn? Well, it's going to turn into its shadow, and the shadow up front darker. Let's just keep that gray. Right? And by getting a little bit darker, what does that do? Well, that puts that light and dark in bigger. Right, if we want just a couple of floaters floating by here, not part of those bigger dark gray clouds. Do some softer. Okay, now where does our soft edge go? Well, it starts with edge, transitions from light to dark with a soft edge, and then it's going to end with another hard edge. Now, probably don't have to tell you, clouds can throw that hard soft edge a little bit things, but it still has to read as a form. It still has to read. So how far can you take it? Well, does it still read as a form? So what I'm doing right now is just softening that between the bottom of the cloud starts and where the cloud turns into shadow. Okay, so I hope that helps out, gives you a few tips. Let's see. Good morning. All right, Katie's number 3. Shakti made it this morning. Good. Good morning. So what we were doing here is just kind of adjusting the values, starting with the sun and synth horizon, making sure it's not too white. But we grade that off, and then we kind of worked straight out from that. Okay. So that helps out. Again, the things I put down on here aren't going to be quote unquote perfect. The perfect color, don't try it. But I'm trying to send you in the direction. To get these really good colors and these really good values, it takes a lot of time. And it doesn't make for very good teaching if I took 45 minutes to get a value situation right. So just section I'm pointing you in, and see how far you can go down that road. Good job, my friend. Good job. Okay, this next one is fun. We're gonna head into still lifes, but they were doing a study with a particular thing in mind. And the particular thing they were working on was the transitions in the background, right? Where we can move, don't really see hard edges as we move around, right? And so doing that on all of these in a million different ways. So now that we know what's going on, and since I just happen to have Odd here from last night, let's shake this up here a bit. And let's see. Let's look at maybe a couple of different people who did this. First, let's look at Odd Neardrum. And then we talked about moving, and then yesterday we talked about moving. So let's expound on that. So you see the kind of that blue, and look how that blue moves from there to there to there. Can you feel that blue in there? Can you feel the blue right there? Can you feel the blue influence there? Tonight I asked you to think about blue and team yellow. Does that read blue or yellow? Oh, so what's happening here? Is this team blue or is this team yellow? Well, this is blue. This is yellow. Yeah, that's fine. Take the easy stuff. What is that? Well, you know, that right there is a very special friend of ours. A very special friend of ours. I hope I spell her name right. Bridget. Right? And who's Bridget? She's the bridge. She's the bridge. The bridge between what? What are you talking about? Well, we're talking about blue and yellow. Now, yellow, they got very different points of view, right? And very sure about their point of view. But still have to get along. And we still have to make things work, right? So yeah, yellow has his way of seeing things and blue has his way of seeing things. But you know what, guys? I don't care how you see it. I still want a working sewer system. So you guys have to find a way to communicate. And that's where we call the ultimate negotiator in, Miss Bridget. I'm going to bridge those. Okay, can you see that? I like to leave that there for a while because it's a little subtle. Very, very subtle. Yeah. That's exactly right. Exactly right. So this painting is called The Savior of Painting. And he's got a bit of an ego. I don't know. Don't you think that's assuming much? No, probably not. But before we go kind of insulting the guy, we've got to remember he was born in 1944. And here's somebody who actually is learning to paint. And is the fame and fortune, right? Is he getting the $100 million that the silver balloon animal sculptures get? No. And so I think that title, The Savior of Painting, history will tell. But there were basically, I feel, just a few painters there for decades keeping representational alive. Illustration. There were some fine, but art. And Neerdrum was one of them. And I would say David was another one of them. And so we got to give them a little, I guess we give them a little room for their ego. Yeah, painting. I don't know if I... That seems like some gumption to me. All right. So we're talking about that coming and going. And what were we talking about for? Well, we're talking about it for little paintings. And if I remember right, Barbara, you remember those we mixed up? That was exactly what we mixed up. So let's go over a few of these, how these might... Okay? And for anybody who's interested in this, this is exactly how you learn this stuff. Studies, do a bunch of them. But part of what we have to set up, if we want great distance back here, right? Not on this, but behind. Back behind in the background. If we want to show great distance, well, some of that's going to depend on us saying, well, this is right in your face. And then this is a little further back, and this is a little further back. Okay? So as we do this, and Barbara may know this, she may be doing something else here, but I want to go over this for everybody. And that's also one reason that when we set our things down, it's a good idea to give a little room so that we can have a chance to introduce these guys. All right, so if we come up first, let's go with like a dark umber or something, should we? We won't kind of go... But say if I start this dark and rich, so I'm going to see if I can't start this dark and then walk back, let your light be your light back there. And let's see if that works and what that does to our painting. Okay, so let's walk back, slightly lighter and slightly grayer. You guys see that? And then if we want to show space, this first one needs to be not as big as our last one. Now I'm going to paint, well, no, maybe I won't. I was going to go right through this, but we can be a little careful and still do this. Lighter, grayer. Now that went a little green. Now we can decide whether we like that or whether that's too much. And that's going to be mainly an opinion. But look how dark we're able to get, and we still done 3 steps. Right? Oh, that green's too much. Well, is it still going to be too much once we soften these edges? Once we invite Bridget to sit down and talk to these These people. These people. Oh, at least we got one fan of Bridget. I was afraid I was all alone there, right? I mean, it's fun to like have invisible friends, but it's even more fun that when your real friends can know your invisible friends. Everybody can get along, and it just makes your parties so much, so much nicer. So the more people that can know your invisible friends, the better. Well, at least that's my philosophy. But I am an artist, so I don't have to always seem completely sane. If you're in finance or you're a lawyer or something, I don't know if you want to be talking about your invisible friends, but hey, that's your business, whatever you want to do. However, you do your thing. There, see, this feels a little better than that green. Okay. And we're going to start jamming now. Lighter grayer. It's got to be smaller. It's got to get smaller as we go back. Remember we talked about that movement coming up with figuring out how to mix these runs. Am I getting close to your color? I think I'm getting close to that color. But can you see that walk back, guys? Oops. I guess I started a couple layers. I didn't know that. So by making this and this the same, basically saying this is on the same, it's almost turn that up. Again, to be fair to Barbara, I don't think she was working on that stuff, but this is such an opportunity to show it that I wanted to. Okay? So you're on the right idea. That's exactly the right idea there. But the measures are still a little much. Not necessarily value, but chroma. Maybe color. Okay? So you're on the right track. You're on the right track for sure. Here again. So I think make sure that you're able to find those dark, like I can feel that all of this already has white in it. And we talked about that white versus non-white. That's one of the things that's going to give you that sense of distance. If you can discipline yourself to have non-white first and then white. Like if you wanted this real light here, let's make this work here. Make that work. So as we come forward and go a little richer. Richer. And notice, look, we've got that size, then we're getting bigger. Now we need to get bigger. Because things up front are bigger. Things close to you are larger. They are larger, we should say. Wait, what do you do? Well, did we talk about green, 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 green? Well, you did. So now, let's talk about red. So that's a little dark, maybe too dark. So that's better. So what if we went, right, that's a little darker, richer. Up here. So let's have that So you guys see what I'm doing? I'm alternating between that warm and cool now, right? And let's see what happens when we're finished. Okay, so this was basically a pattern we were talking about yesterday. You see, I'm pulling that color in, just pulling. And so what looked like, some ice cream for a kid or something, we can adjust that so it actually works. It's so much more about harmony than anything else. Okay? So for my taste, this is still a little pastel-y, but you could totally make that setup work. Does it work with this dark front? No, probably not. So what would we have to do there? Go something like that. And we could start going. Right, that could be our dark. Okay, and not absolutely the best, but I hope that makes sense. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Peggy. You're welcome. I know, what button, and then yeah, I had a button for me yesterday, and that happens. So I was with somebody about the internet and all this computer, and I know especially for some of us that are a little older that weren't born with these things in our hand, they're quite frustrating. I'd like to offer an analogy, and that analogy is when you first got a car, you don't get to open the door, get in, sit down, and just drive it, do you? Well, not unless somebody's taking care of the gas, getting new tires, taking it to the maintenance, getting the engine checked, washing it, right? There's upkeep you have to take if you want the benefits of using a motor vehicle. Well, we've moved from a motor vehicle to a spaceship, okay? And it is a pain in the ass sometimes, especially for us that don't get around so well on these things. But think about it as you're learning to get around the universe. So what if you've got to spend 30 minutes a week and go on YouTube and type in, how do I work Zoom? How do I work this? How do I do that? Or if you're able to afford it, maybe thinking about getting a computer tutor. And half hour once a week or something. And within a few months, you're going to be so much more literate on the computer. And once you're literate, anything you want is there. You can go and everything is out there. Right? And then you learn to search and it's you. So it does take a little work. There's updates. There's, I'm getting locked out. Oh, somebody copied my account. That's all part of it. So you know a little bit about security, about what programs you're using, and things like that. All right. Tough talk this morning. That's me, Mr. Tough Guy. Barbara, I think you're doing great. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. And I believe I got these before yesterday's morning's color mixing. And if that is the case, I'm hoping yesterday morning gave you a lot of ideas. A lot of ideas. So let's see what happens on that. All right, Miss Shakti's off to work. Thank you for sitting in while you could. Let's see, what else we got? We've got number 3. Who's up now? Katie. Katie. Miss Katie. All right, so why don't we stick with that same theme right now, because this is a different measure. Same thing, different measure. Boom, boom, boom. Because these are some nice dark rich. This is some really light and gray. But in this case, we could use a couple more steps maybe in between. And sometimes it's those in between steps that are so hard to find. And that's some of what we were mixing up yesterday. It's a little bit of what we were mixing up yesterday and looking around on the palette at. So where would we go? Where would we go? Well, you got a good start here. You got a good start. Now, I hope you guys can see we've got glare over here, so that's obviously not reading quite right. One of the things we want to avoid, and I don't know that it's perfect, but like if we have that here, we want to make sure that it's different there. You know, definitely different back there. And this was one of the things that I struggled with too. I think we all do. We're just trying to influence a little bit, and it comes off as almost the exact same color. Oh, and that's the worst because we've got to go from more to less to less to less, right, as we move back in there. So let's make sure that happens. So how would we do that? So if we were, say, this color, right, then what I'm going to do is start lightening this up a little bit. So this might be a chance when I put a yellow ochre instead of white in. And if it goes a little green, well, maybe add a touch of red or a touch of orange back to it. We can let that go across there if we want. And then, again, a little lighter layer, so more yellow ochre and a little white to come in here now. And you see that coolness that happens to it, to a certain level of light. And notice how these different levels butt up against the clementine there, which makes the clementine go up in the air or makes it seem real. We talked about that vertical versus horizontals the other day. Is that a big of a step? Maybe. But look, we've got to get back to that light back there. Okay. So I want to kind of even this out and see if now if we don't have a flow from that dark foreground that we talked about that I thought was to that lighter background, which is also right on. And guys, I'm very aware that it's difficult and it can be frustrating. But I'm also aware is it's a skill that will immediately improve your... Okay. Do you see that? So that we were kind of missing. And then with that, our friend Bridget, God, I love that lady. She just comes by and makes everything just so nice and homey. Oh, the house smells good. Fresh food on the table. There's fresh flowers laying around. Ah, Bridget, she's the best. She's the best. So that would be my main critique here. And then what you might want to do with these leaves is maybe, well, I know you're turning them, but we might need them a little more flat, not quite so much in them, just so that they read. So it is important that these things, quote unquote, read. Right, just kind of flattening out. Help that a little bit. No, I'm not changing the values like we could and we could show. I just want to kind of show you the flatness of that. And I think that will help. This shadow to me is reading. So I think what I would do is take some of your orange, your cadmium orange. I don't know what cadmium orange you have. It's this darker or it's this lighter. But what you have, right? Or even a little red, but I think it'll work best. And then just the tiniest little. Can you feel that go just slightly warm? That will make a huge difference. Just in the feeling, it just feels more alive. It doesn't feel so wall-like, so solid. Make sure we keep it dark enough. Dark enough. But do you see how that feels? Ah. We're going to make sure that that highlight reads. So if it's not the photo and that highlight's not showing up bright enough, then what we have to do is we have to darken what's around it. Right? So then maybe our jar has to be this value. Okay? And maybe it's a little warmer, I don't know. Right? But the main thing is that we can have a highlight. We can have a highlight that jumps off of there. Now that's too big, obviously. Okay? And then if you're reflecting that white, don't use the orange to do it. Right? I saw you got some little lighter reflections on the table here, but they look like they were done with orange. I think we'd be better off. I think we'd be a little better off kind of going a little more with the color, right? That reflection. And then maybe over here you might have a little bit that. And then here, let's see. Do you see that? So you want the, if we go green, blue, orange, then the reflection could go green, blue, orange. And now I'm not saying you're going to use those exact colors. That was just a general thing. And then as we rub those in, quiet those edges, make them more reflecting light. Right? Some of the blue may run over, or a little bit of the orange may run over, but we still want it to follow those general patterns. Okay, so I hope that made sense and was helpful. Was helpful? Barbara got on there. You're welcome, Barbara. I hope that helped out. Okay, and Katie, I hope this helped out. Looking good, looking good, looking good, looking good. Okay, so keep practicing, keep doing what you're doing. I think you're doing all the right things. And yeah, we're not done with this. We've got till this Friday for this one. So Friday's the last day of the class for this one. So if you got time, let's do some more on that. Should we do one more walkthrough? Okay, so the last thing we did was talk about making sure the highlight reads even on our white, right? And those reflections. Before that, we talked about evening out those leaves. And then we're Bridget. We got to have Bridget. A woman's touch. A woman's touch. Bridget right there. Right? Bridging the foreground to the background with those color runs or color strings that we might call them. Okay? Good, 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 good job, my friend. Good job, my friend. You are very welcome. You are very welcome. And let's see, last but definitely not least, Miss Janny. Miss Janny. I'm not sure if Janny was able to make it this morning, but she will catch it later. Let's see. Did she say hi? Nope, I didn't see her this morning. Oh, no, I did, because she loves Bridget. Sorry, Janny. All right. What to say, what to say, what to say? You know, I think this is beautiful, really. It's really beautiful. So it's up to you whether you want to push it, because, like I said, you could go with this. And so when I give you guys this feedback, you've got to take in mind, especially if you're really happy with the painting, all right, do I want to leave this one here and then push it on my next one? Or no, we're going to ruin this. We're going to ruin this if that's what it takes for me to learn to paint. You know, sometimes it's good to alternate those. And I know it's hard, but I'm gonna do something that we've been talking about. So basically let's talk about three things. Let's talk about three things here that we're gonna do or address. One of them is the cast shadows. And you see these are very similar in shape and size to the objects that are casting the shadows. So we're going to fix that. Again, you let that white shadow get too light. That's a habit we're having. You're going to have to force that to look too dark. And it's going to look wrong to you. I know it is. But we're going to have to do that to get over that. So first thing is the shadows. Well, the shape of the shadows. The second thing is making sure our white shadows or the shadows on our light things are dark enough. And then fourth, we don't really want our reflections brighter than the objects. We'd like to have them a little darker, richer. Okay, so if with your permission, I will just sit down here and work for a minute, and let's see what we can get into, huh? All right, she says she's finally made it. Okay, she says. Look at that confidence. I love it. No problem, let's just knock that out. Let's just knock that out. So let's come in here and get something, try to get without. That may be slightly too dark because we do want to separate it from the front edge of the table, which is going to have to be a little bit darker. What if we kind of set up our front of the table here? And notice what I'm doing here. I'm not running this way, but I'm running in space. And even though this is a tabletop, right? This is a tabletop front to the back. You know what I'm imagining here? You know what I'm imagining in my mind? In my mind? My imagination? Here's where I'm standing. And then I'm looking over the greatest, biggest field you've ever seen. And so every time I'm going to walk back, 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 I'm going to walk back. And how do I show them that I'm walking back? How do I show them that I'm walking back? How would I show that I'm walking back? Well, the only way I can do it is to show that this is darker, richer. This one is lighter and grayer than the one before it. This is lighter, grayer than the one before it. 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 And at some point, we're going to get back to like infinity, like as far as it is. Now, for a still life, that can all go back. But if this was a landscape, what happens? From here, we're looking at sky and what's happening to the sky. Well, this is like ultimate depth right here. And then we're going to come forward. We're coming more forward. We're coming more forward. We're coming more forward till we're kind of above our heads. Right? Maybe not exactly because... But does that make sense? So it's like we're going back into space, back into space, back into space, back into space. Now we want to show that even if we're doing a still life on a little board, or if we're doing from the tip of the nose to the bridge of the nose. Because the more quote unquote space we create, the more atmosphere this will have. And what did our friend Rembrandt say about atmosphere? Oh, that's right. That was so rough. He said without atmosphere, a painting is nothing. Oof, really? Okay, so that means we're going to put atmosphere in all of our paintings. So I don't know about you, but I work pretty hard on my paintings. And I definitely want them to be more than nothing, right? And without atmosphere, Rembrandt says it's going to be nothing. Oof, that's harsh. So again, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and this would be another reason to set these things back on the table a little, because it lets us walk into them. Okay, so we're going to go lighter and grayer. And now we're not going to go so tall this time. It's got to be smaller. So that first one's got to be a certain, and I'll come back for shadow here in a minute. I'll come back for shadow. But let's just think about building this field that all these soldiers are going to stand on. I think it was Barbara. Was it Barbara that had talked about like a stage, setting up a theatrical stage? Yeah, and so now this one's going to be a little bit smaller. And this is why your first one has to be big enough so that you can keep getting smaller, yet keep going back. Because if we get too small, it's like we're going to stay in the one place. There's a famous philosophical problem with the tortoise and the hare that I won't go into because trying to remember it's going to make me mess up my painting, or Janny's painting here. Do you guys see what's happening here? And is this getting more real? And the only reason that's happening, again, guys, it's not that difficult. It's difficult not to get sucked into all the glitter and the glory that you're seeing in front of us. But we're saying, this is in front of us, then that is behind that. And then that is behind, and that is behind. So rather than choosing a color, trying to match a color, what am I doing is I'm trying to make sure to paint the illusion of space. So my subject matter is no longer a tabletop holding all these objects, but what I'm painting is a tabletop going through space. And that is completely different. And then darker, richer up front. And if this was a cube, getting ready, we're finishing up the cube lesson. That may be our preview. So our charcoal lesson. Then what happens on a cube? What happens on a cube? I haven't seen that lesson. I don't know. Okay, don't worry. I'm going to tell you. Well, then on the cube, what you're going to see is on the corner of the cube, you might find an appropriately sized highlight. And that'll tell you that corner. Okay? Now, for your shadows, the illusion of space. Oh, you're living dangerously. I always have you. Oof. Oof, I need to write that down and stick it in a file somewhere. That could come in handy. Yes, 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 the illusion of space. You got it, kiddo. You got it. Great job. So then for our shadows, and I know we've been over this, but this, again, these things, we have to kind of go over them and over them and over them, not because you're stupid, not because you can't get it, because when you're painting, man, you've got a lot of chainsaws you're juggling, right? And so some of these things just kind of get forgotten about. So, and I think the best way to remember them is just to, continually showing you the effectiveness of this. And because what happens is we get convinced, oh man, you know what? This would. So now our shadows again, I'm going to paint the shadow so that it depicts space, not that it mimics the shape that's casting it. Now this might be a little bit bigger, but I'm still going to make this a thin shadow. And it's taller, so it'll be longer. And maybe I get a little bit long on that first one, so I don't go long. You know, you can just adjust, but you want to keep your eyes open. And again, what does that do? Oh man, it really says space. It really says space by limiting those out. Okay? Now, let's finish with the reflection here. We're almost keeping this to an hour. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. I know, that's for me. I can critique myself a little too. So whatever this is, just a little darker, richer. And then use that as the reflection. And again, soft edges can help that feel better. Now, inside that kind of mess there, you very well may have something a bit lighter, but it's not going to be white. You know what I mean, kiddo? You know what I mean? Okay. Yeah, this is a big one. That illusion of shadow space, shadow depicts space. Yeah, it's a and I know I said this the other day, but I want to repeat it for anybody who hasn't heard it. What we're doing here is when we say the shadow is this big, so it's this tall, then what we're saying is, so that's equivalent to shadow space, that's equivalent. So how many shadow spaces do we have in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're going to have some depth. But what if we compared that to the shadow shapes before? So if we say the shadow shape is that big, then we have one shadow. So it makes the space look really shadow and compressed. Okay? So that's what we're doing when we take that shadow from there and shrink it down to like that. It just instantly creates deeper space in what we're working on. Okay, so I think we covered it all. Did we not? Did we not? Let's see, what did we cover? First thing we talked about, well, we talked about painting the table going through space, the tabletop going through space, rather than matching what we're seeing in the photo or in life in front of us. Okay, and we do that by going darker, richer to lighter, grayer, and going from larger on the first to smaller, and the next one should be smaller, the next one should be smaller. Now I didn't do that to the nth degree, again, because it takes a little time, and I just want to point these out. But you can take your time and make sure you get those sizes and everything right. It really, really matters. It really matters. Okay, so we talked about making sure all this goes through space, whether it's a nose coming off the cheeks, or the eyeballs sitting back underneath the eyebrows, the brow ridge. We want to show space, 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 space. And then, we talked about our reflections not being so bright, right? They have to be darker, the reflections darker than the actual object. And then, of course, the shadows. And that was that. All right. So 10 minutes over an hour, but not too bad. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Not sure what is happening with my switcher here, but it keeps freezing up, and so I'm having major camera trouble. So that's why you haven't seen my very much. But let's see if it can last long enough for us to say goodbye. It looks like it. So as always, I hope you got some inspiration. If you like this, please give us a thumbs up. If you're new around here and you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, we'd appreciate your subscription and turn on those notifications so you can find us when we're back. Today is Tuesday, so on Tuesday evenings at 7 o'clock, we're on Facebook, not YouTube, for Sketch Club Live. We're going to do 2 10-minute sketches tonight at Meyer Studio. Hope you can join us there. Tomorrow morning and Thursday morning, we'll be back for morning feedback for students. And then Wednesday night is Masterworks, where we look at masters and all these things we've been talking about, see how the masters handled them. And then Thursday night, like I said, we'll have Sketch Club. And then Friday morning will be the last class for our January session. And Monday we start February. So plenty going on. I hope you guys are keeping your spirits up. And I hope that you are painting. All right, let's see. Uh-oh, are we already freezing up again? What is going on, guys? What is going on, huh? Any sound video engineers out there looking to do some volunteer work? All right. Jeff Legg, of course I am. Of course, Jeff Legg. Want to look at some Jeff Legg sometime? Maybe we'll do that Wednesday. We'll think about it. But I love the feedback. Let me know what you guys are interested in seeing. And thank you all for being here so much. I appreciate all your time. I hope you found value and helpful and some inspiration, right? Plus a little camaraderie. Let's have it all, huh? A buffet of art. Thanks again. For more information on everything, you can check out the website. So until this evening, have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.